in honor of one of the most prominent, quote unquote, founding fathers of the United States, of this experiment in democracy, Thomas Jefferson. It's one of the most visited memorials by people around the world, not just here in the United States, but around the world. I visited that memorial and read the inscriptions on the wall on a number of occasions over the years since that very first visit on a school trip when I was living in New Jersey. I think I was in the 6th grade, if I remember correctly. And my class took a field trip to the nation's capital. That was my first visit to Washington, D.C. Visited the Jefferson Memorial, visited the Washington Monument, visited the Washington Memorial, and various other places. These are the places that tourists they go to visit and in the minds of many to pay respect. So that there was a years later, after that first initial visit in the 6th grade, many years later, when I moved to Washington, and this was around the time when I began my human rights work, I visited the Jefferson Memorial again, read the inscriptions in the wall, his writings, memorable quotations of his. And there was one that really, by this time, me being human rights oriented and very sensitive to the injustices, both here and abroad, stemming from U.S. domestic and foreign policy. This was a quote that just grabbed me. And I remembered it, and I remember it to this day, word for word. I remember the quote word for word. I tremble for my country when I reflect God is just. His justice cannot sleep forever. There's a very thought-provoking quote coming from one of the founding fathers of this country. No doubt it stemmed from his awareness that America then, in its earliest days, it was mired in contradictions. It was mired in hypocrisies. And he knew, as an intelligent man, that these contradictions, they would have consequences. When I read that quote, I was so taken by it that I wondered, okay, exactly when and where did he say this? And so I did my own little research on that particular quote, and I came to learn that this was something that he said to one of his closest friends in a letter. It was a letter, a very candid conversation through a letter that he had with a very close friend, no doubt a close confidant. I tremble for my country when I reflect God is just. His justice cannot sleep forever. And this again stemmed from the contradictions that existed there. America, a country that was founded in the assertion that it would be a land of liberty and justice for all. A contradiction, another contradictions. At that time and for years to come, it was mired in a tremendous contradiction. It had chattel slavery. And whilst slavery is an institution that goes all the way back to, time immemorial, it goes all the way back. every society, every race of people going back in time have experienced slavery. They've had slaves, but the slavery that came uh, out of Europe to the Americas, by way of the Middle Passage, this slavery was very, very unique. It was very pernicious and very unique. In other societies that practice slavery, a person could be a slave today and could be a free man tomorrow. But the slavery that took place here in the United States was an enslavement that was based on race and class. In the early years of this, again, experiment in democracy and Republican government, there was at one time, there were white slaves as well as black. There were Native Americans who were enslaved, in the indigenous people of the land that were also enslaved, but they found quickly that they could not keep them enslaved on their own land. They could not do it. The rebellion coming from a people who were native to this land was so effective, and that they quickly learned that this was not something that was feasible. The combination of that and also the fact that the indigenous people of the land were even more susceptible to the diseases that were brought to this country from Europe. They were even more susceptible. And so the combination of these two things, the resistance and the fact that our native brothers and sisters were more susceptible to the diseases that came from Europe, it made the enslavement of them untenable. And that's not to say that the Africans that were kidnapped from the motherland and brought here by way of the Middle Passage had an easy way. They didn't. I just saw another note about the millions that lost their lives en route to the West Indies and then en route to the mainland. They lost their lives. Many of them died through the brutal conditions that they were forced to endure. And then there were others that took their own lives, that jumped off of ships in chains. So, again, Jefferson's warning, and that's what it was. It was a warning to his compatriots. Is something that resonates to this very day. I tremble for my country when I reflect God is just. His justice cannot sleep forever. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said something similar. The wording was different, but he also said something that reflected upon the law of cause and effect. Dr. King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. There's been a lot of back and forth that I have been seeing in the past less than 24 hours. That the world has been made aware that this country of ours, along with the apartheid state of Israel has once again visited upon another nation in the quote-unquote Muslim world. My immediate release to the folk who follow me through the various social media platforms, I should say that follow us, Brother Saalakhan and the work of the Afia Foundation. My immediate release was titled The Attack on Iran in the Month of Ramadan, and it reads as follows. Hands down, apartheid Israel and America. Apartheid Israel and America. And the America that I'm referring to now is the other America. You know, there's two. There is the America that we project to nations around the world. Again, this fabled land of liberty and justice for all. And then there is the America that instead of being spelled with a C, could more properly be spelled with 3 Ks. That America. Hands down, apartheid Israel and America are the greatest purveyors of violence in the global community today, on the global stage. And then we have the ayah from the Quran, from Surah Al-Baqarah, the 2 ayahs, 11 through 12, that are very appropriate for reflection at this point in time. It reads in translation, when they are told, do not spread corruption in the land, they reply, we are only peacemakers. Indeed, it is they who are the corruptors, but they do not perceive. How long will the United Nations allow what's left of so-called international, what's left of the so-called international order be threatened by rogue governments before it takes a firm, uncompromising stand for international peace? How long? This was my first release after I learned that another assault has been made on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now there's a summary. You know, of course, I went to a number of news feeds, official news feeds, CNN, CBS, Fox, Reuters, the Associated Press, a number of feeds to see what was being said about this attack. And I decided that I would share a summary of what I came across through the BBC, the British Broadcast Corporation, the UK. The summary reads as follows. Israel's prime minister says, there are growing signs that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is gone after US and Israel, after US and Israeli strikes. Satellite images earlier show damage to Khamenei's compound in Tehran. Unconfirmed reports in Israel and the US say he was killed. The US and Israel have launched attacks across the country. Israel says several, and this is a quote, several senior figures from the Iranian regime have been eliminated. In response, Iran has launched attacks throughout the Middle East. Apparent Iranian strikes have been reported in Dubai, Doha, Bahrain, and Kuwait, places with U.S. military bases or that are allied to the U.S. Donald Trump said earlier that major combat operations were underway and urged Iranians to take cover. Oh, no, I'm sorry. To take over the government. To take over the government. New explosions were reported across Iran on Saturday evening. And Israel says its Air Force continues to operate in the country. More than 200 people have been killed. I'm sure it's way over 200. Across Iran, the Red Crescent says the U.S. and Israel think the Iranian regime is vulnerable, writes our international editor, Jeremy Bowman, and believes this is an opportunity not to be squandered. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says British planes are in the sky today in the Middle East as part of coordinated regional defensive operations to protect our people, our interests, and our allies. Another release reads, Ayatollah Khamenei, who has been supreme leader since 1989, is the most powerful figure in Iran. He is head of state and commander-in-chief. He also has authority over the national police and the morality police. Khamenei controls the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is in charge of international security, and its volunteer wing, the Basij Resistance Force, used to quell dissent in Iran. Now, I'm going to stop here on these news summaries and say this within the context of the theme for this presentation, brothers and sisters. We are living in very, very challenging times. It's no question about it. These are very. The challenges that we are facing, brothers and sisters, they are not going to go away anytime soon. It is so sad that we are living in a time when Muslim blood, once again, in this era is cheap. It's heartbreaking, really. And it's a challenge on all of us to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is one of the aims of the month of Ramadan. One of the aims of Ramadan is to bring us closer to the Creator, closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and closer to each other. This is a time, given everything that's happening here in the United States and abroad, here in the United States, the war that has been raging within through ICE and the so-called Border Patrol against half of America's population, the half that didn't vote for this sorry excuse for an American president. War has been raged domestically here in the United States for months now. And subhanAllah, it has now begun to spread abroad. And what we are seeing, what we're witnessing, what we're experiencing, this is not going to go away anytime soon. So it's important for us, brothers and sisters, it is important for us, especially now in this blessed month of Ramadan, this month of inner jihad, sabilillah, for us to work as hard as we can to get close to who and what we're supposed to be. To get close to our identity as Muslims. To really, mind what this means, what it means to be a Muslim, especially in a day and time like this, when there are challenges on so many fronts, north, south, east, and west, internally and externally. There are so many challenges, domestically and internationally. This is a time for us to really work on internalizing the message of Islam and not just being content to practice Islam on a